Welcome to my workshop and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to make what I like to call my knockabout stool, which is a three-legged stool that is modeled after one that stood in the corner of my grandfather's milking parlor for many years. It had to be sturdy because periodically a hoof would come in contact to it and it'd go flying. And when it wasn't in use, it was kind of thrown into a corner. So it had to be a very sturdy kind of making. But I've also found over time that it is a highly functional project for all of us that as we get a little older and we find it's a lot easier to get down than it is to get back up. This is something I reach for. Oh, and it is so great. And quite frankly, don't plan on making one, plan on making two or three, because you're going to find that you got a couple different places you'd like to have it. In your garage, in your where you put on your shoes. Great Christmas present for friends. Your kids will all want one. So don't plan on making one, plan on making a half a dozen. Okay, here we go. Before we dive in, let's talk for a minute about what makes this tool special. The three legs mean that it's always stable, regardless of how uneven the ground is. Now, my grandpa's milking parlor, the floors were rough concrete, and let me tell you, they were not smooth at all, and this stool would never wobble. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is that your weight needs to stay within the triangle of the three legs. So it's great for sitting because that happens naturally, but don't stand on it. If you stand on it, it's too easy to get your weight outside of the triangle of the three legs and over you'll go. So it's a good sit upon. It is not a good thing to stand on. Before we talk about the specific materials, let's talk about past failures. If I go back and look at the batch that I made a dozen years or so ago, what I find is 2 points of failure. The first point is right here, where this leg was broken off because too much pressure was applied to the side and it just simply snapped that. Now, quite frankly, this is just simply common lumber. This is yellow pine, and it really was not a suitable wood for the stool. Lesson learned. Second point of failure is right here, is I had a glue failure. And that's a function of not having the tenon properly sized to the hole. That's more than anything else. So, what I come and take away with is that as we look at the new design with the new batch, I need to make sure that there's plenty of strength in here. I need to increase the size of the tenon to address this weak point here, and also to try to give more glue area, a larger diameter on the tenon, so that the glue has more wood to attach itself to. Okay, with those things being said, wood types. Maple would be wonderful, hickory, yellow poplar, white oak, river birch. You're looking for a wood that will take abuse, that's got a tight grain, easy to glue up. Now, it doesn't all have to be the same wood. Now, sometimes you're going to make the seat out of one color, or you could even mix the colors a bit and the legs out of another. It really depends upon what you have access to. Now, what we need to end up with is 3 pieces, 12 inches long, 6/4 or 1.5 inches thick of the proper wood for the seat. For the legs, we need to have 3 1 3/4 by 12. So once you have those the wood set up, the next thing to do is to address this edge right here. And it's really important that this be a true, clean, good edge, because when you glue the whole thing up, you don't want to have any gaps between your 3 boards. Now, there's a reason for the 3 boards. Though I have made them with more, I ran into a problem that you put one leg here, and one leg here, and one leg here, so now all of a sudden each of the 3 legs is kind of centered in the middle of one of the boards. So you don't have to worry about any weaknesses from glue lines. All right, so I want to make sure that that edge is good. It's perfect. Going to check this one, perfect. And keep going. And they're all good. Now, it is quite satisfactory to take those back to a jointer if you have one, or to a thickness planer, or with a hand plane. Any of those work to make sure that you have a good edge. Range those so that what we see pleases our eye. So I'm going to put those 3 boards like this, and to mark them, I'm going to go 1 so I can keep track of them. I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to bring it up like this, and I'm going to mark that this is the top of the board, this is the top of the board, this is the top of the board, and it goes like that, and it goes like that. Okay? Now, next thing is to do a temporary layout before we go and do the glue up. So I'm going to take a clamp, make sure that their boards are arranged as I want them with the proper orientation on each of the 3 boards. So I'm going to take the boards and double check and make sure after I temporarily clamp them together that this is the bottom, this is the bottom, this is the bottom, and all the boards are arranged in a proper order. Okay, now with them temporarily clamped together, I'm going to mark my center point by just going from corner to corner with this stick. It's just, quite frankly, this doesn't have to be exactly the center. It just helps you get it lined up a little bit. Then I'm going to take my compass and make sure that it's set at a radius of 5 inches, and I'm going to draw the outer line of the seat. Now, using that same radius, I'm going to find the center point of this, and find the center point, or at least approximately the center. Well, I've already done it down here. That's about the same place. Okay, so that's about the center line. And I'm going to take my compass that's still set at the radius of 5 inches. This is where the first leg will be centered. Draw an arc, go to the other side, draw an arc, come up to the intersection of the arc and the circumference line, draw a second line, draw a second arc, and this are the 3 points that will establish where the legs are. So the legs are going to be somewhere along that line, from there to that intersection, along that line, and from here. Now the reason we're doing all this is because I don't want to inadvertently come in. I don't want to inadvertently come in, and as I drill for the tendons for the legs, end up coming across a biscuit. I don't want to do that. It diminishes the strength there, and that's not what we want to have happen. So we're back here. Now the other thing that's going to happen is in this area, I'm going to remove some of this to take out some weight, and I don't want to hit my my biscuit joint, my biscuits in the plate joiner from the plate joiner, or my dowels if you elect to use a doweling rather than a plate biscuit. So, this is going to be removed. Now, what all this is about is getting this set up so that I can come in here and say, I can put a biscuit right here, right there. I can put a biscuit right here, right there, and I won't inadvertently have it magically appear later on. Okay, now, with our layout done, we're ready to cut the slots for the biscuit or to make the holes for the dowels. So I'm going to remove the temporary clamp, come back in here, and I want to talk for a minute about this because what's going to happen is that we're going to recess this right in here and right in here, all 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So we know that that wood will be removed later in the process. Let's get you in a little closer so you can see that. So, and so I don't want the biscuits to end up in there, and I'm really probably smarter to try to have those biscuit slots cut down. All right, let's cut some slots for the biscuits. I'm going to come up, go 1, okay, our biscuits are all cut. So we'll put this tool away. Okay, with our biscuit slots all cut, let's go ahead and start to glue up. First thing I'm going to do is take my pieces and make sure that the orientation is correct where I want it. So I got bottom, 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 hash mark 1, hash mark 2, hash mark 3. We're all good to go there. Now, I'm going to use what's referred to as parallel jaws clamps. These are important because they help you make sure that everything is properly aligned. They don't skip as much around as do pony clamps and bar clamps. The other types of clamps have their place, but if you really want to make sure that everything is aligned, the parallel jaws on this type of a clamp really makes that a little bit easier. I'm trying to make sure that I got glue evenly spread, and this is not a place to be to get skimpy on how much glue you use, because quite frankly I want to see that glue get squeezed out, because that tells me that I have glue thoroughly across the joint for a strong glue up. All right, here we go with the last piece. Going to put them in our clamps. Start bringing them up. Now, what I want to see happen is I want to see glue squeezed out from all the joints, all the way along the line, but I don't want to keep applying the pressure to the point where I starve the joint for pressure. And if I look on this side, I see that I have glue all the way along the glue joint, so I'm good. Now we just let it set overnight and come back to the next step. Okay, with the glue dried overnight, next step is to clean up all the glue off the piece. Now, you got a number of different ways to do it. I would normally start with a carbide scraper, cleaning up the glue. You can also use a chisel. That works pretty well too. This is a plane specifically designed to remove glue. It's nice and tough and robust. All those methods are fine. A belt sander works too. All those are good. But what we want to do is clean this surface up before the next step. The next step is going to be actually, in my case, I'm going to put it through my thickness planer. I have a 13-inch thickness planer, and this is 12 inches wide, so it's just easy to take a light pass off of it. But the other thing that's going to happen is I'm going to reduce the thickness of the piece. You know, this is still 1 3/4 inches thick. What I found is that if I have the final width 1 3/8, it works better. It's not quite as heavy as thick. So I'm going to take a little bit of material off of this anyway, so I'm going to use my thickness planer. If I didn't have a thickness planer, again, as in wood turning, there's always so many different ways to do things. What you can do is you can use a belt sander, start with a aggressive 60 grit, work on down to a 220. You can actually put it on the lathe, spin it around, and take some material off. Best to do that, though, after we cut it out round. My preference, though, is to use the thickness planer while it's still a square and go forward. Now, it is kind of make it easier later by taking your center point, and let's make that a little bit deeper so that after we get done with the thickness planer, we can still find that center point with ease. With that being said, to the thickness planer is next. I'm at my thickness planer. I'm very carefully going to set it at 1 3/4. I'm going to turn on the dust collection system. Now I'm going to flip it over, put it down 1/4 of a turn. Now I'm double checking my thickness, and it is 1 3/8, dead on. Now as we get ready to bandsaw it out, the only point I'm going to make is the more consistently you are close to that line, the easier the next step is going to be. If you come in, you're actually going to shrink the size of the seat, so you need to stay where the line is. With that being said, turn on the dust collection system, and here we go. One thing is important when you go to take the blank off the bandsaw. Always make sure that the blade has come to a complete stop before you try to back it up. And there we go. There we have our seat, ready for the next step, which is to the lathe. Okay, we're back for the bandsaw, and what we have now is our blank fully cut out. Now I've taken the time to go ahead and redraw my 120-degree lines and the center recess point. And if you look carefully here, what you're going to see is that I was able to keep my center mark that I had made early on, and even through the planing, that mark is still there. It makes the layout a lot easier. Before we go further, though, I want to talk for a minute about one of the keys to a successful project, and that is to think through the sequences and holding methods beforehand. When I came to truing up the outside of my seat, I really thought through 6 different holding methods that would work and all hold the wood safely. Now, I also realized as I did that, the key is the marks left in the center by whatever holding method you use. Now, quite frankly, the simplest holding method is simply between centers. Nothing wrong with that, but if you're going to hold the seat between centers, what you have to think about is how are you going to version. What I did is I went ahead and left my marks, but I actually made them into a pattern, and in effect it becomes part of the signature line, and you can do that on the front and the back. Now, if you want to keep things really simple, you can use your normal drive center and live center, and you're going to end up with a mark on the bottom and also a mark in the seat on the top. And what you do is you come back as the final step and drill a 3/4 inch hole or maybe an inch hole so that you actually drill those marks left by your holding mechanism out, and you plug it with a wood of the same color or wood of a contrasting color. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. They're all right. Now, if you have trouble or you're unfamiliar with all the different holding methods, I'd suggest to you that you go into the American Woodturner and look up my article, Basics of Work Holding, in the December 2009 issue of the American Woodturner. Or you can go to my website, DennisBelcher.com, and you can download it from there. Okay, with that being said, as I work through all the possible holding methods, what I decided on is a faceplate. And the way it's done is I simply take in a piece of 1/2 inch plywood. I put on it some carpet underlayment. It also could be a mouse pad or some fun foam that you find at Michael's. Just something to give a little bit of grip to it. And all we're going to do is take the seat blank, mount it on the lathe, jam chuck it against our faceplate, foam covered faceplate, and we're good to go. Now what that will do is that will leave a mark right here. But since this recess is going to be turned away later, that holding mark disappears, and so you leave no mark in your piece. The key point to this is to think through the sequence beforehand and realize that work holding methods are very important. You need to have a library of them, and do take a look at the article and spend some time thinking through, writing out your sequence before you start the project. It just turns out better. All right, let's get to the lathe. We've got our seat blank mounted between centers. I'm sorry. We have our seat blank mounted actually in a jam chuck position. I've checked that everything's tight, and we're going to use a spindle roughing gouge to actually true up this edge. So with the speed turned down, here we go. Turn it up to working speed. Put the gouge on the tool rest. Find the edge and bring up the handle. Now what I'm going to do to improve the quality of the edge, I'm going to take the spindle gouge and I'm going to rotate it and cut at an angle across the fibers now, which will also burnish it at the same time. All right, let's take a look and see what we got. Oh, we got some nice color in that blank. Got a little bit of tear out there. All right, let's do it back the other way. And we're done. That's pretty good. A little bit of sanding here in a minute. Next thing I want to do, relieve the edges of the seat here and here. When you make your jam chuck, the foam covered backing here, it's important that it be of a smaller diameter than your seat so that you can get to this edge to round it over. So I'm going to take a bowl gouge, find my edge, and simply take a small rounding cut right in here. Now I'm going to come to the other side and do the same thing. There, we're good. It's time to do any sanding we're going to do on the edge of the seat itself. So I'm going to turn the speed down, bring up some sandpaper, keep it moving. Every time I change the grit, I'm going to change the direction on the lathe, and we're done. It's not a bad time to do a little bit of sanding in here also and on the edges. We're ready for the next step. Okay, our next step is to drill the holes in the seat for the legs. And the angle is very important because that determines how far outside of the perimeter of the stool the leg actually comes in contact with the ground. If you get it too close, so there's not much angle, what happens is the stool becomes unstable. You get it too far out, the leg is more subjected to breaking. So you got to find that happy spot, which for this size of leg and stool is 15 degrees. Now, if your stool is taller, you're going to decrease that angle. If the stool is shorter, you're going to increase the angle, because what you're trying to do is to have the end of the leg outside of the perimeter, or the circumference, I guess the perimeter is a better word, of the stool itself. Now, to do all this, what we're going to do is use a carriage that Mike Peace came up with, and that's quite a ingenious device. What it really is two pieces of plywood drilled together that has wedges. Now that's a 15-degree angle on the wedge, you know, or it could be a 13, or it could be, you know, whatever is the appropriate angle for the stool heights that you're specifically working on. And there just goes like that. Now your seat comes up and sits here, and now we can take it to the drill press and we can drill it accurately to the angle that's needed. But our issue is exactly where do we want that hole to be? And I'm suggesting that it should be about a ½ inch off the edge of the stool. And the easiest way to determine where the drill bit should go is to actually take the drill bit you're using. This is a 1 3/8, which is what the suggested leg tenon is. Put it on that 120-degree line, move it back to the point where I'm looking down here, and the point is on the line, the 120-degree line, and and the outside is at the ½ inch off the outside, and I'm just going to take and I'm going to go and make a dimple. And that has set where I want the drill, the point of the drill, to actually enter the wood. Now I go to the next leg. Let's speed that up a little bit and take a compass and find where that point hit my 120-degree line. Come over here, and there's my 3 points. I can tell that I am a 1/16 of an inch off right there. You know, and in the world of woodworking, hey, that's okay. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, with our points marked, we're ready to go to the drill. Right there. Okay, now it's very important that the seat blank not move as the drill bit enters the wood. Now there's a lot of force involved so we're going to clamp it to the drill press table securely. Now it's clamped here. There's a clamp here. There's another clamp on this side. Now what it will want to do is as this bit comes down, one wing of the bit is going to come in contact with the wood before the rest of it, and so it'll want to turn it this way. Final thing that we have to concern ourselves with is how deep that hole is going to be, because we don't want it to go all the way through. So I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to see that the stop on the drill press leaves about a little bit more room depth than I want, so I'm going to let it go just a little bit deeper. I'd like it to leave about 1/4 of an inch of wood. There, we're tight. Now we go back and position our seat blank. Final check, and here we go. It's very important as you come down slowly and let it just barely touch the wood, because there's a lot of force involved here until we get further into the wood. Now we're going to release it from the jig. You need to be careful with the shavings. You don't want them to change the angles or the setup. All right, let's get a position for the second. Now I've got 2 dowels here, so I don't have to worry about the position, how far off the edge it is. It's held in place. I mean, that's all changed. But I do have to make sure I'm on my 1/3 or the 120-degree line. There we are. There we go for our second one. And see the movement? So it wasn't held firmly enough, and I came down a little bit too quick, and it wanted to move on me. So we come and check it again. Okay, here we go. I'm going to hold this a little better and come in a little slower this time. There we are. Now we clamp her. And we're done. There are 3 holes, all at the same angle, all a ½ an inch off the edge. And so now we're going to go back and attend to the legs. First step is to find the center, mark it on each end, and then come back and create a dimple in the center. That dimple makes it just so much easier to actually put it and to line it up on the lathe, which is what we're going to do next, and lock her down. If you hold the hand wheel and just try to twist this a little bit, it helps it to seat a little bit better. Now I want you to notice what we have here. What I've done is I've taken a sample, a model, and I've positioned it so that it's someplace where I can visually see it. It helps me to get all the same lines on my actual leg. I'm going to bring up, turn on the lathe. We're going to use a spindle roughing gouge to actually turn this square piece of stock round. You know, it's one of the 2 primary functions of wood turning tools, is either to take a square piece of stock and make it round, or to curve, which is what the bowl gouge does so well. Now here we go. Dust collector on, everything's locked down, speed down, turn it on, rest it on the tool rest, find the heel of the tool, bring up the handle, and start to cut. One of the things that's wise to do is to take the edges down so they don't come flying off accidentally at you. And this just make this round. Do the same thing at this end, which is take off the very end so it doesn't fly off and get broken. Now as I turn the spindle roughing gouge at an angle and turn the shaft slightly, what happens, I start to direct the chips away from me, and I also burnish the leg itself. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is bring up our story stick. Now what I've done here is I've taken and marked all the key dimensions on this story stick so that I can mark my piece. And there we go. Take the pencil and make them a little bit more visible. Now we're going to set our key depths. Proper tool for that is a parting tool. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Now, if I look at my story stick, what I know is that this should be 1 3/8 in the finished diameter. This area, which should be 1 7/8. The low point is 1 5/16, and this point should be 1 3/4. Are those marked? I'm going to set up calipers. This caliper is marked 1 3/8. I'm going to use the parting tool to set that diameter. Our next dimension is the slender part of the leg, which is 1 5/16, and I have another caliper set up at 1 5/16, so we're going to set that dimension. Okay, with those dimensions set, we're ready to take away some wood. First thing we're going to do is to set the tenon. Kind of rough that in. Then we're going to come down to start to create the curve. Now I'm going to use a skew to turn the leg tenon, set the limit. Now what I want to do is have a slight taper on it, and I'm going to check that the sizing is correct. And it's too large, so we'll take a little bit more off. I really do want this to be a tight fit. I'm just going to taper it down a little bit. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this in the hole and try to bruise the wood. What happens is it tells me very clearly where my diameter should be. So now we'll go from measuring to actually bingo. Now what you want to have is a good tight fit, and that's what I have there. So that's what I'm looking for. All right, now let's go back and finish off the leg. I'm going to use a 120 Abernet. Now I'm going to put this up here diagonally, because what that does, it helps to smooth out the leg itself. Now comes the interesting point. Let's put these two legs up next to each other. And you can see there's a slight bit of difference right in here. But that's pretty close, and that's just eyeballing it. Now, so let's move on to the third leg. And there are our three legs. All right, before we start to assemble, one final thing we have to do is to take off this nub in the center of the recess. I'm going to take a sharp bench chisel, start it, shift it, bingo. One final detail before we move on to the glue up is to take a V-gouge, that looks something like this, and to create a relief channel in the tenon so that any excess glue can get out of the joint rather than the pressure on the glue starting to push the leg back out as before it dries up. Okay, so channel created. We're ready for the glue up. Now if you notice, there's still a little bit of, there's movement in there, so we got to make sure that the legs are properly splayed out. Okay, now what always happens is there's always a little bit of play in the legs. So, and we want to make sure that they're all held firmly out. So what my practice is to take a board, put across all three of the legs, and to load that up with sandbags. So there's about 25 to 30 pounds of weight. That ensures that the legs will dry fully splayed, and at the same time any glue that oozes out will ooze out and not run down the leg where I gotta and ruin the finish. There we are, the legs weighted down, and we'll let them sit that way overnight until they're fully cured. And with that, we have concluded the process of making a knockabout stool, one that you'll enjoy for many years. And it's a great thing, functional. And I got to tell you guys, every time I reach for it, I think to myself, I'm really glad I got one of these. It makes it a lot easier to get up off the floor. So keep the chips flying, guys. Thank you.